Now, Rebecca Estep. She's Director of Communications for the Elizabeth Burt Center for Autism Law and Advocacy, and she's the mother of an autistic boy. John Gilmore is the Executive Director of the Autism Action Network, also the parent of an autistic child. Michael John Carley is the Executive Director of GRASP, the Global and Regional Asperger's Syndrome Partnership, who has a child with Asperger's. And Dr. Robert Melillo is the co-founder of Brain Balance Centers, which looks at all disorders on the autism spectrum and beyond. Thank you all so much for being here.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Let me start with you, Rebecca.
Sure.
There was a piece posted online. I know that you haven't looked at this, but it's called "I Am Adam Lanza's Mother," and it is written by a woman who said, it's not obviously written by his mother, but she talks about how she has a son who terrifies her, and that we don't know what's wrong with him. She says autism spectrum, ADHD, oppositional defiant, intermittent explosive disorder. She basically says she's afraid of her son. She doesn't know exactly, they don't know exactly what's wrong with him, but she doesn't feel that there is a place right now in society to get the right help.
The services.
The services. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are there are so many comorbid situations in some of these kids with autism. And
what do you mean by that, comorbid?
Comorbid means you could have ADHD, you can have oppositional defiance disorder. Kids on the spectrum look very different. I could not have written that article because my son does not have meltdowns and is not violent. But my son probably could have, but we were able to access the right services very young, and he got those impulses under control. And what we don't know right now is enough information about what was going on, how many services. We don't even know truly what his correct diagnosis is.
And I want to emphasize that we're talking about this at all because the brother, Ryan Lanza, reportedly told the police that his brother suffered from, was on the autism spectrum, and he reportedly used the word Asperger's, which is sort of, it's considered on the autism spectrum, but maybe not for much longer. In any event, so many people, Dr. Melillo, it's something over 1.5 million have Asperger's or have autism in this country. 99.9% of them commit no crime, no violent crime.
Correct.
Should we even be talking about this?
Yes, I think we should, because one, I think we've ignored these problems for too long. So although this is an unfortunate situation, it's bringing up a good opportunity to talk about something that I think has been ignored by this country for way too long. We've been spending so much time talking about politics and the economy, and we've forgotten about our children. We're literally seeing an epidemic of these issues in the United States right now. And these are neurological problems. And
these are not mental illnesses. Autism spectrum is not a mental illness, right?
No, it's a neurological problem, and in many ways, it can be prevented, it can be treated effectively, but most kids, I don't think, are getting the proper resources that they need. And I think that, it's possible to conceive of that this could have been prevented.
John Gilmore, they said that this mom, Nancy, struggled with what to do with her son and decided to homeschool him for some period of time because she didn't feel like she was getting the support she needed. Unlike Rebecca, obviously, she was not as supported as she needed to be. That seems to be clear to us. Well, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, that's actually not unusual for people who have children on the autism spectrum to homeschool them. Many public schools aren't really equipped to provide an appropriate setting or education for children with autism, but it seems like, with this case, we're talking about a young man, and when they get to their 20s, there's a complete evaporation of services.
Right, because they've gone through the school system for all those years, and there's been support, and now suddenly it's gone.
That's right. I mean, we talk about it in our community as the day the bus stops showing up. What do you do then?
And what's the general consensus on that?
Well, a lot of fear, and at least for some of us, we're trying to do as much as we can to sort of improve the situation. One thing that struck me about this, though, is that I think it kind of mischaracterizes people on the autistic spectrum, if he was on the autistic spectrum, because I'm not sure if we really know that for sure. Another unconfirmed report was that he was taking a very powerful antipsychotic drug. Fanapt, I believe it's called, right? Now that would seem to indicate, which is not recommended for autism or Asperger's, so that would seem to indicate there's other issues going on with this young man before this happened.
Michael John, Your thoughts on the reports about the guns being in the home? I mean, I don't want to make this a gun discussion, but you know, the mother made the choice. She was a gun enthusiast, which, you know, that's legal in this country. But is there need for a heightened concern of keeping that kind of weapon in a house, in your view, with a child that's on the autism spectrum, or forget that, has just had these type of mental issues in their past?
Well, just focusing on with the autism spectrum aspect of it, I would say no, it's not necessarily going to play a role in whether or not the child is going to use those guns necessarily. Folks on the spectrum, such as myself, such as my son, such as GRASP members, we're very into rules. You know, we don't like ambiguity too much. We don't like, you know, uncertainty in life. The world is confusing enough sometimes, so rules and regulations, they're kind of like safety valves. You know, we appreciate them because then everything is clear. So, you know, usually on the spectrum, you're going to see more of preponderance for an individual obeying the law maybe a little bit too much rather than disobeying the law.
Dr. Melillo, what are the options for a mother like this who, you know, whatever his issue was, you know, extremely withdrawn, extremely intelligent, but growing more and more troubled in recent years, according to the reports, all of which remains unconfirmed, but we need to get this out there because already the discussion about these things is out there. What are the options for such a mother?
Yeah. There are options out there other than just throwing medication at kids, which really, again, may or may not be appropriate, but it's not the long-term answer. We know that. There are centers like what we have, brain balance centers, which are out there. There are behavioral therapists.
Where you can have your child tested and get a diagnosis, a meaningful diagnosis back? Or
where we can work with the problem. It's not about just labeling, because everybody is different. Every child is different. Everybody with Asperger's is different. They may follow the rules, but then there may be others that have no empathy, that really don't feel much in the way of pain or compassion and may be prone to anger and outbursts. So there are all different types, but the underlying problem is the same. There are neurological imbalances, and we can deal with these with multimodal treatments, different therapists, occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavioral therapy, nutrition. All of that is very, very important. There's a lot of options out there.
And yet outbursts, I mean, it can, just because your child has outbursts who's on the autism spectrum doesn't mean anything about whether they're going to be violent. It can just be, you know, they can have outbursts because you took a stick of gum and they didn't want you to take it.
Right.
I mean, the spectrum is in general, it's a communication disorder. And therefore, if you're trying to communicate something and you don't know how, it's going to be presented in a very different way. And that may resonate to somebody that doesn't understand autism as a tantrum.
Rebecca, your thoughts on the message we need to take away from this?
The message we need to take away from this, I feel horrible about this situation. I think the reason my son got the services he needed was because I was tenacious. My husband and I hired an attorney to make sure he got the services he needed. I know that most of the parents out there can't do that, but they can look into free advocates and just to not stop. Get every single thing you can for your children to make sure that things like this do never happen in the future.
You've got to be a mother warrior or a father warrior. Thank you all. We'll post more on our website, foxnews.com.